All right, rock and roll. Welcome one, welcome all to the Scorched Earth Political Podcast. I am your host, John. And if you could hit that like and subscribe button, it means a lot to us. Feel free to drop something in the comments, whether you think something about the podcast or there's a future topic you'd like me to discuss. Please feel free. I love the comments I get. And let's get to it. Let's burn it all to the effing ground. And wow, let's start with the Donald Trump 60 Minutes interview with Norah O'Donnell. I thought Nora did a pretty good job. It's easy to really second guess from the cheap seats. You're dealing with somebody who has sued your network, and the network caved and gave $15 million to the porta potty, the theoretical presidential library that he's going to build. And because he said that they misedited an interview with Kamala Harris and it affected the election. Of course, first of all, he won that election, but Paramount needed to bend the knee because they wanted to get their little merger done with Skydance. And now Norah O'Donnell has an editor who has been put in there by the Trump administration. So she has to kind of walk on tender leaves there. But I thought she did a pretty good job. But really, the first thing that caught me was she brought up the government shutdown, and she basically talked about the expiring ACA subsidies. Now, these are government subsidies that help fund, subsidize, whatever you want to call it, people's personal health care. And because they expired on November 1st, most people are seeing their premiums double. And I thought Nora did a very good job talking about 70% of the people who receive ACA subsidies live in red states, live in states that he won in the 2024 election, and especially in Florida, where he is at Mar-a-Lago when the interview was being conducted. And he said, well, the Democrats, I'm not going to deal with the extortion. We need to fund the government, and then we'll talk about fixing it. And Donald Trump has always railed against Obamacare. It's the big bad boogeyman that he hates so much because it truly, in 50 years, will be a mortal legislation that great president Barack Obama passed. And Donald Trump, really, when you look at his legacy, what is it going to be? An insurrection on January 6th, 34 felonies on financial fraud. It's going to be really, really an amazing thing. Oh, 2 impeachments in the first term. There's going to be a heck of a legacy, right? I mean, right now, Richard Nixon's like, oh, thank goodness I'm no longer the worst president. But he talks about they want to fix healthcare, and they have never come up with a plan. And I would say you cannot have anybody who's a more strident Republican than Marjorie Taylor Greene. And honestly, I don't know where she's going, but she is really getting some common sense in her. And she has decried that the Republican Party, basically over 2 Trump terms, 6 years, 5 years, has not come up with one thing to improve the ACA. They are so fixated with, we've got to take it all down and then come up with a new plan. Now, if you remember correctly, in 2020, in the campaign season, Donald Trump kept saying, we have a new plan we're going to unveil in 2 weeks. Kind of like he's going to solve the Ukraine problem. Oh, we're going to solve it in 2 weeks. We're going to solve it in 2 months. We're going to solve it in 3 months. And of course, like everything else, there is no plan, because that takes time, that takes substance, that takes intellect. Those are 3 things that are not prevalent in the Trump administration in any way. And also, Marjorie Taylor has thrown a haymaker at Speaker Johnson and talked about he's kept the House out of session for 5 weeks. We all know why, because he doesn't want the 218th vote to release the Epstein files from the DOJ. But also, they're not dealing with the expiring subsidies on November 1st. And she said he has no policy, Speaker Johnson that is, no policy to deal with the upcoming problems. And that's the truth. At the end, as we look at it, here is what the emblematic issue is. The Republicans want to keep Obamacare there so they can use that as a boogeyman. But in 5 years, under Trump, they have not come up with a single way to improve it. It is pathetic and it is weak. And look, I'm a Democrat, I'm a progressive. I honestly believe in Medicare for all. But let's take that off the table. We put something out there. Barack Obama, the great leader he is, got it passed. It may not be perfect. I know it's not perfect, but let's go back in the time capsule. And I'm going to talk from personal experience here. I have a mom, excuse me. Thank goodness she's still here. Love you, Mom. And she had so many pre-existing conditions, medical conditions. She could not get insurance. People forget about what Obama did with that prior to the institution of it, I believe it was actually put into law in 2011, people that had pre-existing conditions could be carved out from insurance companies. Now we take it for granted because they can't deny you. And basically that was the brilliance of the Obama healthcare plan is everybody has to get health insurance, but it's the young people who are going to be able to put money into the system to be able to take care of people. And this is a little shocker. As you get old, you get pre-existing conditions. You know, it's kind of like in COVID. Well, they died because they had a pre-existing condition. We all have a pre-existing condition. We all have something wrong with it. Now, is it fatal? Maybe, maybe not. But we all have something wrong with our body. And as we age more and more, we depreciate. You know, I don't want to put us into decline because we're all in our mind, we're still all vital. But our body is telling us something different. And that is the brilliance that was the ACA. Is there things that could be? Yeah, there absolutely is. I totally agree. There is room for improvement there, but the Republicans don't want to improve it because they want to be able to still keep attacking it. That's their thing. They want to keep shooting at it and then go back to their constituents and go, we're going to get that Obamacare taken care of, even though huge numbers of their constituents, which 70% of the Republicans' constituents are getting some form of subsidy to help their health care in America. You know, they don't think about it like that. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, kudos to you, girl. You're the one voice, you're the canary in the coal mine in the Republican ecosystem who's actually talking about why don't we sit down and fix it? And I actually looked up in the Biden administration, there was multiple attempts to do tweaks, to do things to improve it. But unfortunately, in the last 2 years, the Republicans controlled the House and they stopped everything that was possible, also in the Senate. So you got that. Also in the 60 Minutes interview, Donald Trump said, and unequivocally, well, it's going to be hard to fund New York City if Zohran Mamdani wins the mayoral race there this week, which he is the heavy favorite to do. And he said, because he's a communist. All right. I say as a Democrat, as a progressive, as a liberal, whatever you want to put me, I think we ought to just show them what it's all about. Let's talk about all the blue states that are feeder states. Now, a feeder state is one that pays more in federal tax than we receive back from the federal government in the terms of funds, grants, aid, things like that. California leads the country. We pay $83 billion more in federal taxes than we get back from the federal government. And to me, honestly, that's fine. But you know what? If Trump is going to say he is going to deprive the people of New York, and look, we have seen him stop infrastructure projects in New York, New Jersey, Maryland, because quote unquote, they're blue states. We know he is that vindictive, that petty, he will actually do this. If I'm in California, and we are actually in the court system fighting him making cuts to our universities and our science centers that was already approved by Congress last year, that I say, you know what? Let's go. Let's go. You want to cut $5 billion? No, it's $5 billion less we're sending you. Go ahead. Send the National Guard up to Sacramento to see if they can get that money out of the Treasury. Hey, this just in. It's not in cash. It's all electronic. Good luck, Chuck. Good luck. Hey, let's talk about New York. They sent $77 billion last year, more than they received back. You want to take some money away from Mamdani? You want to take something away from the infrastructure project in the Holland Tunnel? That's fine. Let's just Venmo that over there. You know, you want to take $6 billion away from the city and the infrastructure project? That's fine. Instead of 77, we're sending 71. Good luck. Godspeed. We also have New Jersey sent $60 billion more than they received. We've had two major infrastructure projects that were stopped by the Trump administration because, quote unquote, they were in blue states. This is like I have beat the drum many, many times, and I'm going to beat it again. I know you're already turning off the podcast, but Joe Biden, when he passed the $3 trillion infrastructure act in America, in face of all the opposition of every member of the Republican Party, and they had to divvy up the money, 60% of it went to red states. And they asked him, why did you do it to the people who oppose this legislation? And he just plainly said, because they need it more. And it's absolutely true. If you look at a demographic of the United States, the more impoverished states in this country overwhelmingly are red. It is what that is. And I personally think that Democratic-run states are more prosperous. They're more economically viable. It's where business wants to go. You can talk about taxes all you want. I will say this, and I've had a couple small businesses. There is not one person. Maybe there's one. There's some idiot out there. 99.9% of the people who start a business do not do it because, they just lowered the tax rate. They do it because they have an idea, they see an opportunity, they see economic mobility. That is what business is about. And then they pay the taxes as they get around. Nobody in this world has said, I'm going to start a business because of the taxes. And believe me, you do not expand your business because there is lower taxes. You do it because you can get more market share. You can make more money. That is why you do it. Money is still money. And believe me, in this capitalist regime, businesses understand that better than anybody out there. All right. When you were young, did you ever play that game called Limbo? And it's basically where you have a stick and you keep lowering it and you try and get underneath it. And, eventually it keeps going lower and lower and lower until eventually you fall over. I don't really fall over because I'm more of a weeble, my like egg shape, but I was devastating at that game. But that is really a perfect metaphor for the Trump administration's approval ratings, and Donald Trump in particular. His ratings keep going lower and lower and lower. And typically in the first year of your administration, people give you credit. They usually give you a little love. They give you a little credence. Not so much here. His approval rating as of this week is 37%. Joe Biden's at this point was at 43. Okay? His disapproval rating for Donald Trump is at 63%. Oh my goodness. Now, the 63 tops or lowers, however you want to look at the prism, the high of 62% right after Donald Trump incited the January 6th insurrection back in 2021. Let me tell you something. When you've run the economy for less than 10 months and you can actually have more people pissed off than after the insurrection, boy, you're doing some incompetent stuff. And man, he is doing some really amazing stuff. Here are some other poll numbers that came out from the CNN poll this week. 80% of the respondents said they will use the 2026 midterms to send a message to Trump. Let's see if that gerrymandering works down there in Texas and Indiana. 67% also said that they are extremely motivated to vote in the upcoming election. Democrats currently hold a 12-point advantage among Republicans in this voting. We are going to see, and this is actually going to come out on Tuesday, we're going to have elections in Virginia, New Jersey, California. Let's see how that blue wave is starting to gain some momentum. It is here. And when you look at these other podcasts, when you look at the other legacy media, they talk about the Democrats' favorability rating is in the 20s, 25, 28, 29, whatever it is. And it's true. I think, though, the reason it is so low is because people are frustrated because we do not see anybody fighting for us. But trust me, 1 year from now, that election will be about Donald Trump. And the funny thing is the only person in the Republican Party who I think at this juncture is being astute enough to understand what that is coming is Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she is peeling away from the MAGA. You know, we have a governor's race in New Jersey where the Republican who used to kind of be anti-Trump has went full MAGA, full Trump. Let's see how that works out in the Garden State. I should be interesting. All right. Finally tonight, you know, as we go into the 5th full week of the government shutdown, SNAP benefits stopped on Saturday. 42 million people are not going to get the food assistance that they so desperately need. 80% of the people who guard and maintain our nuclear force are furloughed. We're seeing stories about multiple historic delays, ground delays at airports all across the country, because now the air traffic controllers in this great country have went 5 weeks without a paycheck. ICE gets a paycheck, Kristi Noem gets jets, but not the FAA controllers. And literally, I saw a story out of Houston that typically there's 200 to 300 people who are on TSA lines at the busy time. Today, they estimated there were somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000. And that is because the planes are going slower. They're backing up. They're backing up. I saw in LAX, I told you the story, my little brother flew out internationally, and his delay was 4 hours. And that's on top of a 2-hour ground delay where basically no planes were able to take off from LAX on that Sunday morning. You know, but as bad as this is for everybody, there's somebody who found a little bright star, and that would be our FBI director, Kash Patel. Oh yeah, you know, the guy who missed all the reporting on the Charlie Kirk, didn't find anything over there at the Michigan church shooting, even though it was online, you know. But it seems like he's got a girlfriend, and her name is, hold on, Alexis Wilkins. And I guess last week, she sang the national anthem at a wrestling event at Penn State University. And Kash was in Virginia, and he decided to get on the corporate jet, which is the U.S. taxpayer jet, and fly over there to see his girlfriend. Afterwards, he got her on the plane because he is such a hopeless romantic and flew her home to Nashville. Wow, what a gentleman. Of course, the initial reports are that each flight costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $90,000. Well, it's okay. We only have a government shutdown, people going without food, but Kash, he's living good, right? Well, Kash caught a lot of flack because actually somebody in the FBI, a conservative who has, I guess, ties to the administration, showed the flight logs to various news outlets, and Kash is starting to get a little backlash. And here's what he said. He said, "These are disgustingly baseless attacks against Alexis, who has done more for this nation than most will in 10 lifetimes. He then continued, "Attacking Alexis jeopardizes our safety as a nation." No, I don't think anybody's attacking Alexis. I think they're attacking you for the misappropriation of federal tax dollars so you can act like you're Romeo to your own personal Juliet. And honestly, you know, he's stealing from us. That is plain and simple what he is doing. Now, in the Trump administration, this isn't even a misdemeanor. You know, we have Donald Trump getting a 24-karat gold crown. We got him getting a $400 million Qatari jet. We have him getting billion-dollar resorts from Qatar and Vietnam and who knows, Indonesia. Hey, how you doing? Going to step up to the plate in the corruption game? So yeah, you know, $180,000, $200,000, you know, to fly your girlfriend around the country. I guess it's really not that bad. You know, you called her a patriot, so that should be good enough. But at some point, I am hoping when this administration is laid to waste, we are going to see a backbone out of the Democratic Party, and we are going to see investigations by the House into the corruption that is being perpetrated by the members of this cabinet each and every day. You know, Kristi Noem going down to Argentina to do a little horseback riding with Corey Lewandowski. Yeah. Hey, don't worry. It's offset because we share one room. Oh, yeah. That's great. Thanks. You know, the day's coming. And you know what? We're 1 year away from the 2026 midterms. It seems like a lifetime away. We still got 3+ years of this Trump administration. But you know what? Everybody out there, please go vote. Keep the fire going, because we are going to beat these SOBs because they're immoral, they're inadequate, and they're just plain evil and corrupt. We're on the side of right. We're on the side of democracy, and I salute you all. All right, if you have a chance, please go out and vote, and we'll see you soon on the Scorched Earth Political Podcast.